He has a very short attention span, and whether he's really willing to see it all through, or whether conditions permit it to be seen through, I think are very unclear. You know, this 20-point plan, my first reaction was to think of Woodrow Wilson near the end of World War I announced the famous 14 points that would be the basis for peace and security in the world following. And Prime Minister Georges Clemenceau of France, hearing about the 14 points, said, "Oh, 14 points. That's very strong. The good Lord himself only had 10.
Now, the war in Gaza has stopped, certainly for now, and Donald Trump insists for good. But can the peace last? And that question is not just about whether the effusive praise showered on President Trump by Israeli leaders yesterday stands the test of time, and the comparisons with Cyrus the Great, who freed the Jewish people from captivity in ancient Babylon over 2,000 years ago, was maybe a bit over the top, but that was about staying on Trump's good side. More important and more relevant now is whether Israelis and Palestinians can live together in lasting peace, and whether the Middle East can find stability. Making the peace stick, finding a way to govern and rebuild Gaza, it sounds almost impossibly hard, and it could be harder than it sounds. Could be. In a moment, I'm going to be talking live to President Trump's former national security advisor and now one of his fiercest critics, John Bolton. I wonder what you are thinking. Send me a text, 87222. Start with the word Times, or a tweet to @Times Radio. Now, earlier, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, addressed the Commons, leaving no doubt as to who should be credited with peace in the Middle East.
Let no one be any doubt that none of this would have been possible without President Trump. This is his peace deal, delivered, of course, with President Sisi of Egypt, the Emir of Qatar, and President Erdogan of Turkey. Alongside our partners, we have also offered the UK's full support to these efforts. Mr. Speaker, we've worked behind the scenes for months with the US, Arab, and European nations to help deliver a ceasefire, get the hostages out, get aid in, and secure a better future for Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank. I am proud of our contribution.
Keir Starmer speaking earlier. Many challenges remain. 33 people have been killed by Hamas. 6 are shot by the IDF in Gaza. I spoke earlier to Anshel Pfeffer, the Israel correspondent for The Economist, about the situation on the ground.
Hamas won't just disarm and give over their arms to some civilian groups. There has to be some kind of military force there. You also need the knowledge of how to decommission various military infrastructure and weapons. So all these things are supposed to happen in the coming days, weeks and months.
It's Anshel Pfeffer speaking to me just a short while ago. Welcome now to the programme and to the studio, Anna Mihailova, political editor here at Times Radio. Hi, Anna.
Hi, John.
So, Anna, Keir Starmer, full of support for the peace process and ready to offer practical help.
Yes, that's right. We've had a bit more detail today about what sort of role the UK might be playing going forward, and that there's a lot of focus on the UK drawing on experience in Northern Ireland and using that to help with decommissioning Hamas. Obviously, that is going to be an extremely hard task, but the government is very keen to stress that usefulness there, as well as raising finance, working with international institutions and ceasefire monitoring. So that has been the line, and we've obviously seen Keir Starmer in the House today with what I would say is a very warm reception cross-party to his statement, and I've spoken to some people in government as a result. They're pretty happy with it. They've even pointed out that there were Tory MPs standing up and making a point of being quite supportive. So, you know, the mood today was pretty positive, trying to focus on the benefits of what's happened and not yet going onto the extremely difficult road ahead, as you've been obviously discussing. Two things really stood out to me. He, as you saw, made a real big point of praising Donald Trump personally. I mean, this is in the context of Bridget Phillipson getting quite the slap down from the US ambassador over the weekend for not name-checking Donald Trump. And then Keir Starmer also directly linked his decision to recognise Palestine to helping in this peace process. So he said that helped bring the Arab nations to pressure Hamas. Now, that's quite an explicit detail that they didn't really focus on before, and it's quite interesting. It's obviously in response to the criticism of the UK and scepticism of how big a role it played, as well as obviously criticism over the decision to recognise Palestine full stop.
Well, and just on that issue of the role of Britain and Brits in the peace process, I spoke earlier, as I say, to Anshel Pfeffer, who's a respected analyst, and he really dismissed the idea that either Tony Blair or Jonathan Powell had played a significant role. Just listen.
All this talk of the experience of the Good Friday Agreement, that was many years ago, and it's a very, very, very different scenario in every way. Various people had a role here, and Blair certainly is someone who manages to kind of be in these places. I'm not getting any real indication that he played a key role. That it was good. It seems to be, to me, that he was a bit more window dressing than an actual central player here.
Pretty dismissive.
Well, yes, although I think, it will be fascinating to see when the actual account of how these negotiations were made will be written. But I think we do know that Tony Blair did help draft the one of the set of terms, one of the drafts that was proposed by Jared Kushner, and Kushner's role has been described as absolutely pivotal. And the 20-point plan was essentially based in large part on that version. So I think we don't really know behind the scenes what went on, and it will be very interesting as time goes on when those key players start to talk a bit more in detail. I think just turning to a more another thing that happened today, because the Prime Minister really wanted to focus on this and his role and his experience in Egypt just now. But the thing that keeps bubbling on and not going away in Westminster is the China spy case. And in Cabinet today, Keir Starmer made a point of praising Matthew Collins, who is the Deputy National Security Advisor, who people might remember, very observant listeners might remember, yesterday the government seemed to slightly throw under the bus. He went out of his way, and we got a readout of Cabinet where he really praised him personally and said that he is someone who would do exactly the right thing. Matthew Collins is the official who gave the main witness statement in the whole process to the CPS. It's just very interesting to see the Prime Minister go out of his way to praise an official like that. It's a real signal that he is trying to sort of course correct, I think, from yesterday and put all this criticism behind him.
Right, Anna Mihailova, political editor at Times Radio. Thank you, Anna. Now, let us welcome to the programme John Bolton, Ambassador John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor to President Trump. Welcome to the show, Ambassador.
Glad to be with you.
Welcome to you. Can I ask you, first of all, for your thoughts on President Trump's role in the Gaza deal and his way of achieving the agreement?
Well, I think it was obviously very significant. There's no doubt that the return of the hostages is a very welcome development in Israel. I think a couple of other things contributed to it. I think the attack on Iran's nuclear program certainly woke up everybody in the entire Middle East that Iran's role in large part as the paymaster for its terrorist proxies was now coming into question. And I think the opening was provided by the failed Israeli attack against Hamas leadership in Qatar a couple of weeks ago. But nonetheless, that doesn't undercut the importance of the hostage releases. I think we could all see yesterday in Israel. What comes next, however, is a very different story.
Well, indeed. And in your judgment, will President Trump stick with this task? Listening to him yesterday, he does seem to see peace in the Middle East as an important part of his legacy.
Yeah, but he has a very short attention span, and whether he's really willing to see it all through, or whether conditions permit it to be seen through, I think are very unclear. This 20-point plan, my first reaction was to think of Woodrow Wilson near the end of World War I announced the famous 14 points that would be the basis for peace and security in the world following. And Prime Minister Georges Clemenceau of France, hearing about the 14 points, said, "Oh, 14 points. That's very strong. The good Lord himself only had 10.
Yes. Now, the progress down this road will require the lasting commitment of Arab leaders and majority Muslim country leaders. Ambassador, are you confident that that will be there when it's needed?
I don't think we can really predict with any confidence one way or the other. I was listening earlier to the comments by the reporter from The Economist saying there was a need for a military force to help disarm and demilitarize Hamas. And the demilitarization, the eradication of the tunnel network is the next important step. I don't know who you're going to get to contribute to a military force at this juncture. So it may well be that the entire enterprise collapses in the second stage. Remember, back in January of this year, as Trump was coming into office, he effectively forced a ceasefire and hostage exchange on Israel at that point, forced Israel to accept a plan largely negotiated over a long period of time in the Biden administration that had two phases. Beginning phase, a hostage release, followed by phase two, which was everything else. So Israel accepted a 2-month ceasefire, January to March, did get some hostages released, and then phase two never happened. So we've been there we've been there before, as recently as early as this year.
Now, I wonder if this gives some sort of insight into the president's thinking now. One of his memorable phrases in his various speeches yesterday was "make peace, make money." And does that give an insight?
Yeah, I think it says a lot. I think Trump views everything as an opportunity to make a deal. And with this much chaos going on and destruction, I think he could see visions of, as he said earlier this year, of the Riviera of the Eastern Mediterranean in the Gaza Strip. All of that means, however, that there has to be some level of continuing political stability, because neither Gaza nor any other war zone attracts capital investment until the investors feel that there's a chance whatever they put in won't get destroyed in subsequent combat. What we see going on in Gaza now, although there's certainly a welcome increase in humanitarian assistance, is Hamas seeking to reassert control over the areas of Gaza from which the Israeli Defense Forces have pulled back. They're meeting some resistance. I think that's a good sign that some Gazans are standing up to them. But how that plays out over the next several weeks while the outside parties try to determine how to implement the very aspirational idea of demilitarizing Hamas is negotiated.
I mean, in some ways, this is a facile question, because we're not fortune tellers. Is it your hunch, though? Because I'll put the question: is it your hunch this plan can make really significant progress?
Well, let's put it this way: at the celebration, and it was a celebration, and appropriately so, at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt yesterday, many nations from Europe, many nations from the region, the United States were there to confirm the peace agreement. There were only 3 parties missing: Hamas, Iran, and Israel.
Yeah.
Really, what could go wrong?
Okay. I mean, look, Benjamin Netanyahu, I wonder if you feel, again, this is another exercise in peering into the future, but do you think he is now at the end of the road politically, and would a change of government benefit this peace process?
I agree. I don't know the answer to that question. I do think people may be misapprehending the impact inside Israel of the hostage release, which is universally celebrated, as is perfectly understandable. But it also eliminates one of the chief arguments, one of the chief criticisms of Netanyahu's conduct of the war, really for almost the entire 2 years, that he was not placing a high enough priority on the release of the hostages. And the emotional demands of the families and friends growing over time produced really quite substantial protests, street protests, and political consequences. That factor is now removed to universal acclaim. There are no more Israeli hostages. So how much now the anti-Netanyahu forces can count on the energy that was supplied to their opposition by the hostage issue, I think is a big question mark. Early polls showed a small rise in Netanyahu's approval after the Trump trip. We'll have to see what the polls show, but this could be, because it is such a good thing, as I think all Israelis recognize, the hostage return may actually boost Netanyahu's political standing.
All right. Ambassador John Bolton, former National Security Advisor to President Trump, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.